You see, something is going to happen. Something wonderful.
My God, it's full of stars.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the NY Patriot Show. This week, this episode, we will be continuing off kind of the patent and the experiments done on USA, and I think that included Canada too, right? That episode? Mm-hmm. Canada citizens. We also are covering, thanks to our reporter in the streets, Inspector Helen Holmes. She had sent us some stuff because I was kind of actually interested in stuff in the UK. And she had sent us plenty of stuff. And I'm going to be totally honest. Once I eventually got around to looking at the stuff that she sent me, I was kind of surprised at, I guess in some ways it almost seems worse than the stuff we covered before. Or at least shockingly bad, I thought, you know. Or they both have their crazy things, like, or just different applications of doing just as crazy as the next person. Or, you know, something like that. We used light bulbs and dropped dust in the air. They used animals and, you know, all sorts of stuff. So very, very weird. And Helen, I do appreciate the information. Thank you for sending it over. And I do have my amazing co-host with me, as usual, Teresa. And she has a microphone.
I know, right? Like, for everyone listening, do I sound different?
Yeah, you do. You
I hope
amazing.
so.
Yeah, it doesn't pick up any noises or your hair.
I know. I'm sorry.
No, it's all right. Well, now since you have a microphone, we're going to have to figure out how to pick up your dogs walking on the floor and the ceiling fan in the other room.
So I can be a real legitimate co-host.
Yeah. Right? Gets a mic and somehow the audio gets worse. I don't know how you pull that off.
No, hopefully there's less of that sort of thing going on and everyone can hear me clearly. And yeah, I'm excited. It's my first time using it. So yay.
Awesome. Yes. And you know what? I normally don't plug certain stuff, but I have come across people using Logitech equipment. And it's not as expensive as like other brands. And their stuff is actually, I think, pretty damn good. Synthetic Psyop uses Logitech. That's a Logitech. Lee from Inner Guardians uses a Logitech. I thought that was like a few $100 microphone he was using until he was like, no, it's my headset. I was like, fuck, that's Logitech?
Crazy, right?
That sounds decent. So maybe if people out there are aspiring to be a podcaster, check out their stuff for some decent, reasonably priced stuff, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Doesn't always have to be a bougie roadcaster and pod mic, like I was an asshole and bought.
No. No, we do what we can with what we can. I think if people want to start podcasting and getting into something, it applies to anything. Just start with what you have, right?
Yes.
So just begin and then slowly improve over
Plenty
time.
of people have started off with a headset and a phone.
That's it.
And now we're doing...
That was me.
Yeah. Look at Jack Allen. He started off, I think, pretty much, it sounded like it. God, I'm sorry if it wasn't your headset, Jack, but it sounded like his first few episodes was literally done talking into a phone, and I think he's even admitted that. And now he's got StreamYard, goes live, he has the microphone, he's got the setup, you know, he's got the nice 1080 4K webcam going on, you know. So just start somewhere, you know.
Just start. Thanks for bearing with me.
Oh,
and the people listening, and
listen, it was worth it to have a co-host that brought, you know, that brought stuff to the show. So to me, it was worth it. You know, I'll take the low quality over information.
Thanks.
Of course, yeah. So awesome. I guess I was going to let you start this off. This one off, and that's mainly because I do think, if I remember correctly, this is kind of like a major place where they do experiments at as well, right?
Yeah. So again, thank you, Helen, for all the great information. So this place that a lot of experimental things have gone down in the UK is called Porton Down. So it's a science park in Wiltshire, England, just northeast of the village of Porton near Salisbury. So it's home to 2 British government facilities. It's the site of the Ministry of Defence's Defense Science and Technology Laboratory, which is known as being one of the UK's most secretive and controversial military research facilities. It has over 7,000 acres. It's big.
7,000.
Yeah, 7. And is also the site of the UK Health Security Agency. It is home to other private and commercial science organizations and also houses other companies too.
I wish I could remember the name, but like this stuff even reminds me of and this is just very interesting how like, you know, they'll admit it here. I guess not, you know, advertising it. But like I had covered something again on Lee's show with Travis Taylor, and something about like his father worked at something like that, but here. You know, we have our own versions of that here. And, like, they can't even use the place anymore because the soil is so contaminated. They don't even want you there. It's like, you know, if that's still open, like, that hasn't had that issue that we had here. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I think we have a couple of places like that here in Toronto, and I'm sure Canada has a few spots like that. Interestingly, too, it says to the northwest of Portadown lies the Ministry of Defence's Boscombe Down Airfield, which is operated by Kinetic, but Kinetic is spelled Qinetic,
Ooh.
which I thought was weird, right? And it's identified on maps as a danger area, so you're like not to go there. Interesting, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Kinetic with a Q.
Kinetic with a Q on both ends, like the beginning and the last letter, right? So Portadown opened in 1916 as part of the.
Yo, that's
War
old.
Yeah, it's old, man. It's over 100 years old. It's crazy, right? Yeah. So it's part of the War Department's experimental station.
You know, real quick, and like not to interrupt you, but I feel like a lot of times when you start, at least with the United States, I think I remember coming across, in other countries, they seem to have used World War I as an excuse for needing to start testing this stuff.
Yes, this is exactly the same.
But
situation.
yet, is this before?
No, this is so World War I think was 1914 to 1918.
Yeah, so this thing hasn't even World War I hasn't even ended yet.
No, it hasn't ended. No.
Yeah, because a lot of things that I came across used the World War I after the fact.
I see.
As the reason why now we need to start testing this stuff.
Right, and the same thing happened in World War II. At the end, you know, we got so many three-letter agencies as a result, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, Portadown opened in 1916 for testing chemical weapons in response to the Germans' use of chemical weaponry in 1915. So, like you said, a response out of World War I tactics. The laboratories research and develop chemical weapon agents used by the British Armed Forces in the First World War, such as chlorine, mustard gas, and phosgene. The key buzzword of like the last couple of episodes we've done on this weather manipulation and experimentation, right? Mm-hmm.
I wonder if like if you were like every country that does this type of stuff, if you were to look up their reasoning why, I wonder if it's like everybody's just like they're pointing the finger at the next person.
Right?
Like, oh, we're doing it because of Germany. Germany's like, well, we're doing it because of the United States. Russia's like, well, we're doing it because of this person. Like, are we just all just throwing fingers at people as an excuse?
It's like
and we're just doing it anyway.
Spider-Man, you know the meme with Spider-Man, and all the Spider-Mans are pointing at the other Spider-Man.
Yeah. I was thinking something like that as I said this.
Totally.
It's just like, exactly come on, this is just like excuses.
Well, and the funny thing too is like when you think of the world wars, you always think of like, well, you and I probably think this way, and a lot of people listening are probably in the West, right? Let's say. So we have been told since we were young that like the Axis powers were like the bad guys. So like Germany's bad and Russia's bad, but actually the Allies were using this stuff just as much, if not more, than the other side of the coin, right?
Yeah, I do even remember, if I remember correctly, a lot of reasons why I think like even the Axis people were like demonized was because of like chemical shit like this. Yeah,
but the British and Americans did it too. So, and Canadians, but yeah, crazy, right? Okay, so to continue with a little bit more history about Portadown, By 1926, the chemical defense aspects for air raids for the civilian population were added to the responsibilities at this location. In 1929, the Royal Engineers Experimental Station became known as the Chemical Warfare Experimental Station, or the CWES. And then in 1930, Britain ratified the 1925 Geneva Protocol, which permitted the use of chemical warfare agents in retaliation. So legally, you can use chemical warfare as a retaliation tactic, apparently.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. They changed that law in 1925. Yeah. So it has...
So, like, you can use it if it's being used on you?
Exactly.
Oh, so then you just got to lie.
Right? You just got to say, they did it first.
I got the sniffles.
Point at Spider-Man.
I got the sniffles. Launch anthrax.
Right? Yeah. Or I don't know. Does it have
Release
to be
the anthrax.
Does it have to be in response to a chemical attack, or
Well, that's what I was even thinking too.
Attack?
Yeah, right.
They bombed us, so can we like mustard gas them?
Yeah.
Right? Like I don't know exactly the
Right.
protocol.
That's I was even thinking that too. I'm like, does it have to be a chemical attack?
Yes. I don't want to go into more from this article because it relates then into the
Other stuff that we're going to cover. Yeah.
The specific experiments we're going to talk about. So
yeah. Well, I had you mention that one first because
Yeah.
of that. It was like kind of a commonality between some of the things we'll cover. It was all done at
Totally.
this place.
Porting down.
Yeah, I even think might even the one that I'm covering next might even I think involves that.
Sure.
And that is Operation Cauldron. Operation Cauldron was a series of secret biological warfare trials undertaken by the British government in 1952. Scientists from Portendown and the Royal Navy were involved in releasing biological agents, including pneumonic and bubonic plague,
What? Oh my god.
brucellosis, I'm not exactly sure what that is,
Mm-hmm.
and tularemia, and testing
all bacterial things, right?
and testing the effects of agents on caged monkeys and guinea pigs. That was another thing too. There was a lot of stuff in some of the things I have that they did to animals, and if people haven't noticed already, I didn't want to say this at the beginning, and sorry, I'm interrupting the show now. This may be an episode that if you're listening to it, you may actually want to watch it, because as we're talking, there will be stuff, video clips, and pictures of some of these testing behind us. So you may want to watch it because you'll actually get some old footage from some of these operations. Sorry to interrupt. Let me get back to where I was. Carried out by Britain, the tests were a joint Anglo-U.S.-Canadian operation with a U.S. Navy lieutenant commander taking part. U.S. documents showed the operation was not purely defensive, as later claimed at a joint 1958 conference in Canada. The U.S. Chemical Corps minuted it was agreed studies should be continued on aerosols. All three countries should concentrate on the search of incapacitating a new type of lethal agents.
Ooh.
Yeah, the tests. The experiments were carried out at sea off the coast of the Isle of Lewis in the Outer Hebrides. I could be saying this wrong. Aboard a floating pontoon supported by the ship Ben Lomond, or whatever. The test animals were placed in cages on the deck of the pontoon, and biological agents dispersed either from a bomb suspended from a boom. It's kind of like like what they do with boom mics, kind of like a thing that holds up the bomb, or being sprayed. So like neither bomb was set off to disperse the stuff, or they just sprayed them. Yeah. After being exposed, the animals were taken aboard the Ben Lomond, and those that died were dissected to determine the cause of death. 3,492 guinea pigs and 83 monkeys were used in the tests. The tests were initially judged to be a success, both in terms of effectiveness of the biological agents and the test platform. However, a year later, this decision was reversed, with the tests on plague bacteria being described as a failure and the statement that brucellosis has not increased in reputation as a dangerous agent. Then we have the Corella incident. In the final test of the series, the Fleetwood-based trawler Corella, with a crew of 18, ignored warnings to steer clear and unwittingly sailed through a cloud of plagued bacteria, which was called Yersinia pestis, on its way to a fishing trip to the waters around Iceland, causing concern about a possible plague outbreak around its home port in northwest England. The Corella was not stopped for disinfection, or it's because they didn't have Purell back then. The Corella was not stopped for disinfection or medical examination, but was kept under covert observation by a destroyer. And that I do find that interesting. Like, was the destroyer going to do anything if there was a problem?
Maybe they were just going to shoot them down. Just take them out. If they're infected?
Observation by a destroyer and a fisheries vessel for 21 days, and the ship's radio communications were monitored for any kind of medical distress call. The surveillance period included a period of shore leave at Blackpool, during which the crew mixed with the people of the town as usual. None of the crew became ill. The incident was dealt with at the highest levels of government, going through the first Sea Lord to the Chancellor of the Exchequer, Rab Butler, EXCHEQUER, whatever the hell that is, who was basically sitting in for the absent Winston Churchill. The event was successfully covered up at the time, and after the danger had passed, most of the documents relevant to the case were ordered to be burnt. So that's
so weird.
Yeah, I find that very weird.
I just find it odd that the ship went through this cloud of plagued bacteria, but then none of the crew got sick. So then does that kind of support the idea that germ theory isn't real?
That's a really good question.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe it wouldn't be a good thing to know because there's a destroyer out there, but I'd like to know what would they have done if there was?
Right. Were they just gonna take them out in one fell swoop?
Yeah, is that why they were listening for the distress calls? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
Very weird. And then on this I have I think this might be kind of the same thing, just a little bit more. Revealed how Navy intelligence tested lethal plague bombs off Scotland. It was early in the morning on June 21st, 1952, when the sound of two percussive whumps coming from a small stretch of sea some 20 miles north of the Isle of Lewis heralded the dawn of a new age in British weaponry. The explosions came from two small 4-pound bombs packed with plague, and they had just been detonated in the open air at sea. Britain had developed the most terrifying biological weapon of mass destruction ever created, a weaponized form of the Black Death, the bubonic plague. Even in 1952, such tests were illegal. Germ warfare had been expressly forbidden under the Geneva Protocol, which all countries except Japan and the USA signed in June in 1925. The Sunday Herald had been passed for more than 40 pages of documents written by the British Naval Intelligence officers and scientists from Porton Down, Britain's secret weapons development laboratory in Wiltshire, which reveal in astonishing detail the secret history of what happened during Operation Cauldron's British program of the building and testing plague bombs. Blah, blah, blah. Operation Cauldron. So, I mean, they're the bubonic plague.
That's serious. What the fuck?
The first plague test took place in 1944 at Porton Down in a controlled laboratory environment, but by 1952, the Navy was using bombs and aerosols packed with plague at sea in Scottish waters. Rhesus, if I'm saying that correctly, monkeys and guinea pigs were put out on the pontoon bridges somewhere about 20 miles off of Lewis and exposed to the bacteria, like I had said before. So, yeah, that's some pretty serious stuff, in my opinion. You know?
It is serious.
Oh,
Yeah.
and now this might get a little bit more. The type of plague bacteria used in the Lewis tests were Yersinia pestis, also known as Pastorella pestis or P. pestis, which can cause both pneumonic and bubonic plague.
Wow.
So, like, they were really going with this bubonic plague stuff.
Yeah.
The trials took place between May 26th and September 8th, 1952, and 34 tests were carried out. 6 used aerosol sprays to spread the bacteria in the air. The rest used bombs. Some of the trials were codenamed Operation Hesperus, during which they were given 80 germ warfare tests using both bomb and spray methods. All the Stornoway experiments were conducted by scientists stationed aboard HMS Ben Lomond, which I mentioned before. So yeah, that pretty much wraps it up with the cauldron right there.
That's wild.
Yeah, I mean, they were really going heavy and hard with the bubonic plague stuff.
It makes me, I don't know, kind of think like, would they just do that again with more sophisticated techniques in this modern era? I mean, I guess they kind of tried to do that a few years ago.
Well, I mean, if you
Right.
think about it, mostly all this biological testing is to what? Equaling the same end result of death.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and we saw plenty of that going around. Well, supposedly.
Yeah. The thing with these, though, that I wonder is like, once it's out there, like say you have an enemy in a foreign land and your defense, people decide we're going to use this biological agent to destroy these people. But you can't control a biological agent once it's out there. So how do you know that the biological agent is not going to also harm you?
Oh, what if you catch a good breeze and it sends it back?
Right?
Yo,
You
that's
know?
actually, I never really thought of it. Like, yeah, unless
It's not a
the only
good
thing
plan.
I could,
Like it's a stupid plan.
unless the only thing I could think of is like if there's like some half-life that they understand with these things that like,
Maybe.
like I'm saying, like, let's say a country like, halfway around the world hit
Yeah.
us with something. Do they know for a fact this stuff won't even live to get over here?
Right.
Maybe,
They might.
maybe something like that. But like that is
Yeah.
actually a good question though.
Or they have the antidote already.
But then you got it.
ready.
But then like, all right. But then like in that case, like, is that something like either you're going to have to convince the population to take, or is that like another thing where you're just going to blow shit up in the air and just give it to them regardless?
Yeah. But
So
even
like
still,
this really opens
uh,
up so many more questions. Like really, like that's a good point. Like if you do have to worry about it coming back, then do you have to protect your area with something else?
Like maybe it's just not a good plan.
Yeah.
Right? And it'll affect the food supply, animal life, water. Like,
Oh, well,
Just
some of the ones that we're going to cover, I think we're meant to screw up the food
Yes.
supply.
totally. Well, the one that I have up next is sort of similar to Cauldron. So it's called Operation Harness. I see that it took place a couple years prior. So they probably learned from the mistakes of Operation Harness because it didn't go very well. And that's how they got Operation Cauldron. It's really short because it was a failure. So I'll just read this article quick. So Operation Harness was a series of 3-month secret biological warfare trials carried out by the government of the United Kingdom in the Caribbean off the Bahamas from December 1948 to February 1949. Animals were exposed to anthrax, tularemia, and brucella bacteria on inflatable dinghies offshore, but the results were found to be meaningless because it says the operation did not go well for several reasons. The sea was rougher than they expected, making it impossible for the dinghies with animal crates on them to be picked up by craft converted for the operation. This meant the tests were carried out just offshore of an island, which endangered the inhabitants of the island. Protective suits were found to be so heavy that those using them had to undergo lengthy acclimatization processes to avoid heat exhaustion because you're doing it in a hot place. Right? Yeah. Sampling equipment was accidentally activated by local radio signals, and conditions at sea made it impossible to accurately measure the amount of bacteria in the atmosphere. Not only that, it gets worse.
It's like, yo, maybe
So-
we shouldn't be doing this.
Oh, 500 of the 600 sheep involved were found to be unsuitable and were shot.
Oh, come on.
So they just killed 500 sheep because they just decided these sheep are not suitable for experiment.
Well, the sad thing is the fact that they were used for the experiment. They were already considered disposable and dead.
Right, but it's like, oh my
It's like
god,
you couldn't have just like let them go in a field somewhere.
just terrible. Guinea
Who give them to
pigs-
some like broke farmer?
Right, yeah, it's like could these sheep salvage like their life in some way?
Yeah, yeah. You need
Anyway,
your lawn
also-
mowed? Here, take some sheep. I mean, it's the least they can do.
Guinea pigs were also found to be disastrous. Rhesus monkeys had to be treated for pneumonia before being used. The official report found that the techniques used were overcomplicated and said that it was uncommonly lucky that only one of the staff ended up infected. So again, all this crazy pathogens and bacteria, and only one person got sick.
Hmm.
Weird. Although they were wearing protective gear, apparently that made them overheat. But,
I
yeah.
have actually wondered, like, if some of these, I don't sound too crazy,
Mm.
but like, could you just put out like videos of you supposedly testing shit and make people scared?
I think they did that already in 2020, didn't they? And like in the World Wars, they used to have those newsreels.
That's what
And I
I'm
was
getting
like,
at. I'm like,
so
I'm
then you
sure
go
that
to the-
could have been
Yeah.
propaganda for all you know.
For sure. I mean, even if the experiment has failed, if they filmed some of this stuff, they probably could have like used the footage elsewhere.
Huh?
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's very interesting to think about that.
And they could have been like, oh, look, the Germans are experimenting on sheep, but really it was just them the whole time.
Yo, that's why I was even thinking that.
But, but yeah, that's it for Operation Harness.
What didn't
Short
go
and
too well.
sweet.
Yeah, that was an entertaining one.
I know. Poor sheep, man. I feel bad.
Sheep, and I was actually going to ask that for the listeners.
Yeah.
I'm actually wondering, and I do know there are some people that may actually know this answer. That's why I'm asking. The reason for the sheep and those types of monkeys, I'm wondering if there's any reason why those might have been used. Is there something up with like maybe those animals being good for something? Because I did notice a lot of these experiments all use those monkeys and sheep. I don't know. I'm just wondering if there's a specific reason why those might be more beneficial.
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I mean, hopefully one of the listeners or
Yeah, if you
viewers
do, let me
knows.
know.
But I mean, sheep are docile, so that's probably why. The monkeys,
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
I was just wondering if there was like a biological reason why.
I feel like the monkeys, it's something to do with like their DNA, because I'm just thinking that with the name like the rhesus monkey, because there's like the Rh negative factor in like human blood. I think it's the same kind of concept.
Yeah.
But maybe I'm just talking completely out of my ass. I don't know.
Yeah, well, see, somebody might actually know that.
better.
Somebody may know that to be correct, and they can let us know now. So
Totally.
yeah. Oh, so next I have the Dorset biological warfare experiments. The Dorset biological warfare experiments were a series of experiments conducted between 1953 and 1975 to determine the extent to which a single ship or aircraft could dispense biological warfare agents over the United Kingdom. The tests between, this is a little bit, I guess, not as old as the other ones, 1971 and 1975, were known as the DICE trials. The tests were conducted by scientists from, as usual, Porton Down, initially using zinc cadmium sulfide, ZNCDS, as a simulated agent. Early results clearly showed that one aircraft flying along the coast while spraying its agent could contaminate a target over 100 miles away, over an area of 10,000 square miles. This method of biological warfare attack and test program to study was known as the Large Area Coverage LAC concept. In the early 1960s, Porton Down was asked to expand the scope of their test to determine if using a live bacteria instead of the zinc cadmium sulfide would significantly alter the results. Scientists from the Microbiological Research Establishment at Porton Down selected South Dorset as the site for the next phase of testing with Bacillus subtilis. And this actually goes back to something that I had mentioned in, it might have been the subway maybe, also known as Bacillus globigli. Remember I had a problem with that. Globigli, or BG as they call it. I'll go with BG.
Let's do that.
Also known as BG, selected as the test agent. So here they are using the same test agent, I guess. The bacteria was sprayed across South Dorset without the knowledge or consent of the inhabitants. Trial area maps showing experiments conducted during 1964 and 1965. There will be a map up behind us that will actually show like kind of where the ship was going. The straight lines indicate the track of the spray ship, and the numbers on the land indicate the location of sampling positions. During this second trial season, Porton greatly expanded the trial areas and made use of the whole of the Lyme Bay and surrounding countryside. The resulting bacteria aerosol clouds generated from a ship sailing either in Lyme or Weymouth Bay were detected as far west as the edge of Dartmoor and Devon. Maybe that makes sense to people who live over there. I have no.
Yeah.
I have no.
Like, how far is that? I don't know.
Yeah, is that like New York to California or Nassau to Suffolk? I don't know.
Yeah.
And as far east as Ridgewood in Hampshire. So the trials were conducted, and I'm going to try to read these quick, and it's really just kind of. Actually, I'm not going to read all of them. But what I do want to get at is that there was between 1963 in October to May of 1965, there was 27 of these tests or trials done. And one thing I did find interesting, and I did bring this up, I think it was the Gematria episode with Contemporary Problems on the Occult Rejects, went live. I don't know. I don't know if it's going to be out or not by the time this drops. If it's out, check it out. If not, you'll hear what we talked about. I do want to mention this one. I asked him to cover the number 217 or combinations of, because I had come across some interesting things that I thought with that number, especially in the news. To make it real quick, I had found, was it Dan Levy from Schitt's Creek, making a post on TikTok about a news article about these balloons being shot down on 217. So the weird thing is at the beginning of the TikTok, Dan Levy says it's been 17 years and 2 posts since I've done this. TikTok hasn't been around for 17 years. So I don't know where the 17 years and 2 posts comes from. So it seemed weird that he included 2 and 17 and then pointing at an article talking about the weather balloon on February 17th. And then somebody else I know that thinks that they're like this all-knowing authority on Aleister Crowley sold his, dropped his money-making book on February 17th as well. So I started to wonder, is there something up with that date? And the 17th trial was done on February 17th, 1965. I find that interesting.
Very interesting. Oh, and the Ant-Man Quantumania movie came out.
217.
217.
Yes, there was a lot of things dropping on the 17th.
Mm.
Balloons, movies, and books.
Interestingly, as a random commentary, I heard this morning that Wikipedia, I have not checked it myself, so don't take my word for it, go check, has changed in their Holocaust entry the victims of the Holocaust from 6 million Jews to 17 million Jews. I just heard that this morning.
17.
And I was like, say what? I'm like, those numbers are arguably already symbolic. The 6 million to begin with. So
The 17
now,
makes it seem much worse.
why has it jumped suddenly to 17 million?
I think 17. I don't know.
That's just interesting.
I
since
think
we're
the
on
17 in the M to the million just says it all right there. 17 in letter M.
Yeah.
And then whatever. I don't want to say too much stuff. But, I mean, even when you get into like Jack the Ripper, just put it that way. What was he writing on the wall?
I don't know. What was he writing?
Stuff about the Jews, but not his. The religion. He's talking about the Jews from the Mason shit. The people who killed. What the fuck is that dude? That some of their things is based off of. Oh God, I forgot his name. Someone's name that is like pretty important inside the initiations. Supposedly was killed by I think Joos or something like that, or they spelt it differently. So
interesting.
Yeah.
Weird.
Yeah.
Just a funny aside.
Interesting. Wow. I got to look into that. I find that very
Right?
interesting.
Yeah. I thought that was wild.
And then here I have, again, during the early 1960s, scientists from the Microbiological Research Establishment Portendown were asked to investigate whether similar results could be attained by using live bacteria. Yeah, I said that all again. But it was realized, it was quickly realized that the Porton Range, 7,000 acres, like you mentioned before, was far too small to be used. So obviously, like, they already knew, like, this stuff could spread pretty fucking far.
Yeah, sounds like.
Yeah. The Lime Bay is semicircular. It's about 25 to 30 mile radius, which is another reason why they had picked that area, because it was pretty big. It has a nearby dockyard, which facilitated the spray ship. It was only about 50 miles from the laboratories of Portendown, which enabled overnight examination of radioactivity, or anything like that. So, that was another reason why they picked that area, is because obviously I think they understood that this was going to spread far. A 25 to 30 mile radius. It's big.
It is big, yeah.
That's like, I'd be interesting. Wonder what like the mile radius of Manhattan is.
To compare it, yeah.
Yeah. I'm trying to look it up real quick right now. Mile radius of Manhattan.
Huh.
Radius of Manhattan. Because
Let's see. There's something comparable in our minds, right?
Yeah. Wow, it's not like giving me like a fucking straight answer. Jesus Christ.
Oh, you'd think that would
right.
come up real quick.
What is it? Whatever. Or maybe put in what is the size of Manhattan? What's the size of Manhattan? 30.
No, stop.
33.77 square miles.
Oh my God. Shut the front door.
Oh, come on.
Why? No.
It's crazy is that I think like you could have actually taken out Rhode Island too if those bombs were lethal that they dispersed.
Yo, for real.
Because I think that's even smaller. Wow, that's 33.77 square miles.
Of course.
But yeah, that's really. Then I also have, just real quick, on the 14th of November in 1963, the experimental trials vessel Ice Whale slipped from Portland Naval Base and sailed around Portland Bill to Lime Bay. At 1:19, Portland scientists started the spraying apparatus, and for the next 33 minutes, the ETV Ice Whale sailed in a straight line across Lime Bay, and spraying all that stuff out. I thought that was interesting that they did it for 33 minutes.
Precisely.
Yes,
Not 30.
The amount of bacterial suspension used in each trial had risen to 488 liters. So we got a 4 and an 8 in there. like everything else going on with the 33.
Yep.
So, yeah, I just wanted to
God.
include that because I thought that was interesting just with the numbers. So,
It's so crazy.
yeah, so that's all I have on that one. If you got something you want to go to next.
I do. I have
Awesome.
another fun UK experiment called Operation Vegetarian.
Nice. And that was actually, I think, might have been a precursor to the one that I'm going to cover, which is very short, too, after.
Oh, okay. Nice. Okay. So Operation Vegetarian was a British biowarfare military plan in 1942 to disseminate linseed cakes infected with anthrax spores onto the fields of Germany.
Anthrax.
These cakes were to be eaten by cattle, which would then be consumed by the civilian population, causing the deaths of millions of German civilians. How nice. Furthermore, it would have wiped out the majority of Germany's cattle to create a massive food shortage for the rest of the population that remained uninfected. Preparations were complete in early 1944. So it took them 2 years to prep, which I will explain why it took so long. So the production aspect of Operation Vegetarian began under the direction of the Porton Down Biology Department, the head of which was, I don't know how you say his name, but I'm going to guess Paul Fields. Since he's British, I'm going to say it's not Fildes, Fields. He was ordered to find suppliers for the chemicals needed for production for both the anthrax and the cakes themselves, along with specialized containers to carry and prevent contamination during transport. This meant that some of the Royal Air Force planes had to be modified in order to drop the payloads without destroying them in the process. It's very complicated. The linseed cake production was outsourced to the Olympia Oil and Cake Company, and they were to produce large batches of full cakes. The slicing of the cakes into the appropriate size was to be given to a soap manufacturer business named J&E Atkinson. Because I guess, like the way you make soap is you make these like logs and then you slice them. So it's a similar process. Maybe they had this machinery needed to do it.
Maybe they're just trying to fucking spread the wealth.
Right? Yeah. So they were contracted to cut the cakes into 2.5 centimeter diameter pieces and 10 grams in weight. So they're pretty tiny. 2.5 centimeters is like real small. It's like centimeters, like the width of like your pinky finger. So just for people who are on Imperial.
Maybe it's like
what
quarters,
does that mean?
size of quarters, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. It's like little coins, I guess. So they were ordered to manufacture 180,000 to 250,000 pieces per week.
Oh, see, people are making that. These companies are making money off of getting those contracts.
Oh, yeah. And the final goal was to have over 5.2 million cakes ready by April 1943.
Is that many cows out there to feed?
I don't know. I don't think so. But I guess they need a lot in the cows to make an effect, perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it doesn't mean they'll eat everyone that's on the ground. Maybe just
it's not an exact science, I suppose. So the anthrax bacteria was produced internally by the British government at a lab operated by the Ministry of Agriculture, Fisheries and Food, with another employed scientist being responsible for figuring out the injection method in order to introduce the anthrax into the linseed cake slices. Like, how do you even make the cake without the cow sort of sniffing it out? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, wouldn't the cows maybe be like, I'm not going to eat that because that smells weird?
Yeah.
You know, like, I don't know. So the actual task of injecting the anthrax was given to 13 women. Why does it have to be 13?
Why did it have to be just women?
Right? They were previously soap makers. So maybe they had some sort of special skill. I don't know. Then they needed to design containers to house the cakes to allow for easy deployment, but also not contamination. So they made up these special containers that could house 400 cakes each, and they had steel handles, so minimal contact by people could be used. The final production task was how they were to be attached and deployed to the Royal Air Force planes. Eventually, the RAF came up with a wooden tray system that would be attached to the flare chutes for release. The planes that were modified for this task were Avro Lancasters, Handley Page Halifaxes, and Short Stirlings. So some pretty sophisticated planes for the time. The testing of the anthrax as an animal elimination method was done on Greenard Island, which is just off the coast of Scotland. This location was chosen because of its small size. It's only 520 total acres.
Yeah, going forward, we'll be calling that G Island.
Sure.
For me, at least.
We'll call it G Island, G Wagon. No, I'm kidding. And it has very few inhabitants. There's also a local military base close by called Loch Ewe, EWE, that served as a staging area for the experiment.
I wonder if that turned into Lockheed.
Sorry?
I wonder if that was like associated with Lockheed at all.
I don't know. Interesting.
Even the last name Locke traces back to some like real shady shit.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
There's a long and varied history there. So the original tests on the effectiveness of the anthrax were conducted on G Island in 1940 and 41, with the bacteria being included in a chemical bomb, which was dropped on 60 sheep that had been shipped over to the island for the purposes of the experiment. The bomb itself contained a thick slurry of concentrated anthrax spores and was dropped via bomber plane. The test was very effective, more than they thought. All the sheep died in days, and also infected a small number of farm animals on the mainland afterwards. So it carried over. It was determined later that one of the buried sheep carcasses had become unearthed due to a major storm and washed ashore. So further spreading infection. Other tests continued until 1943, when the risk of infecting nearby populations was too great, and the island, G Island, was quarantined from all boat and plane traffic. Because of the widespread contamination from the anthrax spores, the island remained closed until 1990. Crazy. All right, just one little part left here. Operation Vegetarian was fully ready for deployment by the spring of 1944, and plans were drafted for the cakes to be dropped in the summer when German cattle would be grazing openly in fields. In order to entice the cattle to eating the linseed cakes, they needed to be dropped after the spring grass had been consumed, and the amount of food left was limited. The raid and airdrops needed to be done in one single action as fast as possible to prevent the German military from knowing what the heck was going on. Paul Fields from Portendown, he estimated the flight path should be from Oldenburg to Hanover and could be done in 18 minutes and cover 60 miles of cattle grazing land.
Wow.
But by the time summer arrived for the plan to be executed, the Normandy invasion had occurred and Allied troops were advancing across Northern Europe. So this caused Operation Vegetarian to be abandoned. 5 million cakes were to be disseminated in Germany and were all eventually destroyed via incinerator shortly after World War II. They literally did all that for absolutely nothing.
Yo, they turned those things into urinal cakes. Stop lying.
Yeah. Cakes of light?
Oh, it's supposed to kill you, though.
No, but I mean, anyway, it was good that it didn't work out because it could have been really bad for the whole world, probably, especially Germany.
You know what's interesting though? Like, I mean, like, was there any proof that these companies that supposedly made all this stuff, again, like we were saying before, going to one person to get cut, one person to do this, like, how do you know, like, was it ever going to work to begin with? And that was just, let's find a reason to get money.
I feel like this is kind of what's going on in the last few years with, the latest pokey stuff. It's a similar thing. Contract this, contract that. Let's manufacture billions of doses, blah, blah, blah. And no one really knows, like...
Everybody just needs to get paid. That's all that matters.
That's all they care about. Just their little step in the plan. They get their money and they're out. Right?
Wow, that is actually really interesting.
Wild. I could say a few more things about G Island.
Yeah, if you
We
want,
not-
yeah, because actually, that you pretty much killed whatever I had left. So the rest is.
Oh, sorry.
I know it's all right. I didn't know you were gonna, because I know you had Operation Vegetarian. I just didn't know how much you were gonna go into G Island, and that's all I had left. And you basically covered everything I had left for it. So.
Oh,
No, that's fine with me. That's fine with me.
Take
You-
away all your stuff. Yeah, so the G Island was contaminated and quarantined until 1990, like I said before. Interestingly, there was something called Operation Dark Harvest. And so in 1981, newspapers began receiving messages with the heading Operation Dark Harvest, which demanded that the government decontaminate the island, and reported that a team of microbiologists from 2 universities had landed on the island with the aid of the locals and collected 300 pounds of soil. The group threatened to leave samples of soil at appropriate points to ensure that they could get the government's attention, basically. Sealed packages of soil were left outside military research facilities like Pordendown. And tests were revealed that it did still contain anthrax bacteria. A few days later, sealed packages were left in Blackpool, where the Conservative Party was holding its annual conference. That soil did not contain anthrax, but officials were concerned, of course. So, starting in 1986, the efforts were made to decontaminate the island. Basically, what they did was take 280 tons of formaldehyde solution, distilled in seawater, sprayed it all over the island. The worst contaminated topsoils were removed. A flock of sheep was then placed on the island to test it, and they did remain healthy. So they determined it fit for man and beast. So basically, officially on April 24th, 1990, after 48 years of quarantine and 4 years after the formaldehyde solution, they determined that the island could be repurchased by its original owners, because people owned it before the government decided that it wanted to take it over. And they repurchased it for 500 pounds. Real cheap, but
Wow.
rightfully so. Yeah, that's the basis of G Island. Also, interestingly, on March 26th, 2022, almost exactly a year ago, the island was burned completely in a wildfire. Eyewitnesses described the scene as apocalyptic.
Wow.
Weird, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
That was crazy, though. Yeah, I mean, even with, I mean, if people were watching, I mean, there was even, showing the videos of that stuff, too. It does look pretty intense, but again, like, now I do question this, actually. Because they never got to use anything, but they, I don't know. They seem to contracted all these people, though, prior.
Seems like they use the same techniques over and over, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. I have a couple more quick things.
Sure, go for it.
All right. So another fun one by the British government. It's called the Rawalpindi experiments, as it took place in India. So these were experiments involving the use of mustard gas carried out by British scientists from Pordendown and hundreds of soldiers from the British Indian Army. So this was carried out before and during the Second World War at Rawalpindi, which is modern-day Pakistan. The experiments began in the 1930s and lasted more than 10 years. So basically, they had soldiers from their own army go into chambers full of mustard gas and observe the effects. They wanted them to be wearing only like cotton shirts and shorts. And they wanted to determine the appropriate dosage to use on battlefields. So they tested on their own people first. Although I do believe the soldiers did have knowledge of what was going on. And they like volunteered for this.
Yeah, I feel like wasn't there something like that I covered too in that other one? Something I felt like that was like the veterans. I think they like kind of like offered for the experiments, but I don't think they knew exactly how serious it was going to be.
Perhaps, yeah. It says here more than 20,000 servicemen were subjected to chemical warfare trials between 1916 and 1989. Oh, at Porton Down. So they're just including that little fun stat in this article. But
Yeah, they're busy over there, huh? Porting down.
very busy. Is it like they're DARPA? Like, geez, I don't know what's
Right.
going on there? Yeah, so basically, a lot of people had chemical burns, of course, pain, discomfort, but no long-term effects of exposure were documented or studied. So that's pretty much it on that one. It's just a little disturbing, but
Yeah.
yeah. And then in a related incident, around the death of a Air Force engineer named Ronald Madison. So he was a leading aircraft engineer named Ronald George Madison. He was only 20 years old, so he lived from 1933 to 1953. And he was unlawfully killed as a result of exposure to chemical nerve agents, acting as a voluntary test subject at Porton Down. It took over 50 years for his death to be investigated and his family to receive a settlement. So what happened was Porton Down had began testing sarin, S-A-R-I-N, sarin or serine, I don't know how you say it, on humans since October 1951. But adverse reactions were not recorded until February 1953. The most severe reactions occurred on April 27th when one of the 6 volunteers was exposed to 300 milligrams of sarin and fell into a coma, but he eventually recovered. This prompted to reduce the dose from 300 milligrams to 200. So, along with other servicemen, young Madison was offered 15 shillings and 3 days vacation for taking part in these experiments. He planned to use the money to buy an engagement ring for his girlfriend at the time. So it's like super sad. I don't know if that's true, but it makes it sadder.
Yeah.
On the day he died, Ronald Madison entered a gas chamber at 10 o'clock a.m. along with 5 other test subjects. They were each to have an identical experiment performed on them, which is part of a series to determine the lethal dose of sarin when delivered to bare skin or battle dress covered skin. The method used was to ensure the change in, I cannot even say this, whatever chemical reaction occurs in the blood cells at small doses to inflict injury or death. Sarin is extremely poisonous because it attacks the nervous system by blocking this enzyme process. This was practical because red blood cell membranes contain forms of chemicals that induce this process. So the participants were wearing respirators with wool hats and oversized overalls, but no other protective clothing. 2 technicians carried out the experiment, and Madison was the 4th person to have drops of sarin applied. At 10:17, he had 20 10 milligram drops of sarin applied to 2 layers of cloth.
You say
to the
20
inside.
too? 20? 10, 17, you said 20 drops?
10 drops.
Oh, I'm sorry, my bad.
Yeah, so he had 10 drops applied to his left forearm. After 20 minutes, he began to sweat and complained that he did not feel well. One person eyewitness report said that he slumped over on the table. The contaminated cloth was removed and he left the chamber walking, I don't know how they know exactly, 30 meters to a bench. An ambulance was called shortly afterwards, and Madison started to complain of deafness. He collapsed and began gasping for breath. Scientists injected him with atropine as they were witnessing an asthma-like attack and convulsions. An ambulance took him to the site's local medical facility where he arrived at 10:47. Attempts were made to resuscitate him using oxygen, further injections of atropine and other drugs, an injection of adrenaline to jumpstart his heart, and he died just after 11 a.m. Yeah, less than 45 minutes after being exposed to the poison. But his death was not pronounced until 1:30 p.m. There's a 13 again. Weird.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there was a whole controversy around his death. Who was responsible? Did he have some sort of like genetic predisposition to like overreacting without knowing that he had this problem. Basically, the military and British government tried to like just make his family go away. They tried to pay a little bit for funeral expenses, not much at all. And then with pressure, the family had an inquest done and they wanted inquiry into his death. And 50 years later, it was determined after judicial review that it was an unlawful killing. So they did end up eventually receiving £100,000 in compensation from the Ministry of Defense.
Wow.
Yeah, pretty crazy. But it ended up, no one was officially prosecuted.
Oh, of course not.
Just a little fun settlement, right? So yeah, that is the British experiments on citizens and military. Pretty crazy, right?
Nobody got prosecuted, just like nobody's going to get prosecuted now.
Exactly.
Nothing new. Fauci's going to jail. No, he isn't.
No one's going to jail. Yeah, that's the thing. No one's going to jail when all the people that control the system are involved. Yeah. So why would they prosecute themselves? Yeah, exactly. Doesn't make sense. Yeah. Right?
Very well said. Very well done. Good job.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you, Helen, for sending us all this so we could do it.
Queen Helen.
Yes, Helen Holmes. Instead of Sherlock Holmes.
Gotta get her like the monocle and the cap.
She actually sent me a picture. I have to pull it up and see if there's a way I could eventually throw it in. It's kind of like her, like looking like Sherlock Holmes.
Oh yeah, I did see that somewhere.
Yeah. I think I might have sent it to you. Yeah, because I was like, yo,
that's too funny.
I was like, this is great.
Too funny. Yeah. Thank you so much, Helen. It was really interesting, honestly, to learn about this and talk about it a bit. Wild stuff, man. And as I was researching, just on an anecdotal note, because my son is experiencing like all these weird rashes lately, I was like, what does anthrax burn look like? I was just like trying to see what it looks like to compare it to his face, but so far I don't know. Still inconclusive on his skin problems. Yeah.
And it's funny, you did mention that only started once the fog came, right?
After that crazy mystery fog, that's when all this weird stuff started with him. The cough, skin, his eczema is going crazy. Like, yeah. So I'm convinced it's environmental and not allergies. So the investigation continues.
Yes. Very interesting situation.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think that went pretty well. I mean, it was pretty eye-opening, I thought, too. Like I was saying before, I was like, damn, I thought the stuff I covered was, like, pretty crazy. I mean, I don't know. I think they're both equally as crazy in different ways.
Yeah, definitely. This is, I think, a little bit I mean,
I guess what the crazy thing is that I feel like the United States did stuff but actually took the risk of exposing people. They used serious stuff and just exposed, people can brush off animals. Isn't that counting? I don't. Yeah. But, I guess it's, better than humans. I don't know who wants to debate
or keeping it more within the military only.
Yeah.
Not that makes it okay either, but yeah. Well, and then, with the cattle stuff, it actually made me think of some reports of cattle dying in the Midwest last year.
I was even like, is there a tie to this in the cattle mutilations?
Right? Yeah, totally. Who knows? Right? Yeah.
That's why, there was a few times where I had even wondered, is this all stuff that was just put out to instill fear, and none of it was real. I don't know. Yeah, who knows? Or it all could be real. Who knows? That's just our theory and our commentary on these things.
Yes.
Who the hell knows?
We're in the business of theories, so take what we say with a grain of salt, Yes.
You gotta make up your own mind with this stuff. One thing I would add, I'm saying this, if someone can send me enough to do a whole episode. This doesn't mean, and I'm not trying to sound like an asshole, I want 50 people hitting me up with one link. I'm not trying to sound like a dick. But if somebody actually had enough information that had crazy stuff like this in another country, send it. I'll cover it eventually. Because it might be interesting. I mean, I'm sure there's other countries that are doing this stuff and we just don't know because we didn't live there. You know, we just don't know
sure.
because they don't talk about it. Like, I didn't know about the stuff in the United States before I covered it.
I'm sure they all do it.
Yeah, so, I mean, you know, if anybody happens to listen that's from another country that knows about a lot of this stuff, you know, if you can send me a bunch of links to do a show, well, I'll cover it. You know, it'd be a free episode for me.
Woohoo!
Yeah. So that is the end of another NY Patriot episode. I mentioned before, and I want to stress again, you know, I think this is kind of an episode where you would have gotten more out of it if you did watch it. For people that are listening, I do have YouTube, I do have BitChute, and I do have Rumble. So you can check those out for videos as well instead of just the podcasts. And yeah. I also have, you could check out the new Twitter and the new TikTok that is in the bottom with the link tree, and check out the Element server. Check it out. Join it. There's a bunch of cool stuff in there. Tons of different shows, tons of different topics. So check that out. And you want to plug your show?
Yeah. If everyone wants to come check out the Spiritual Gangsters podcast, that's another fun one that we have,
Yes.
where we more so like do personal stories, not so much chemical warfare and occultism.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's great chats for like awake and aware people. So come hang out with us there. It's a lot of fun, and you can find all the links in the bottom. It's, you know, on all the major podcast platforms. You can connect with me on Instagram and on Twitter. I am on Twitter.
Yes.
Newly. I really don't like it, to be honest. I think it's very not intuitive, like how you use it. Maybe I'm just not used to it, but you can find me on Twitter at TS Gangsters Pod.
It's good for trolling.
I'm sure it is.
I think I'm kind of over that a little bit, so it's not as fun for me anymore either. I think the biggest highlight I ever had was arguing with Sam Tripoli on this.
There you go. Yeah, it would be fun.
That was
for
a fun one.
That.
That went on for a while, actually. But
yeah.
But yeah, and I do want to add too, you know, we did create a Rumble for her. Start subbing to her Rumble if you want to catch lives. Because I am going live on my Rumble a lot now. Unfortunately, she doesn't have that many subs, so she's kind of like, you know, what's the point? Eventually, we'll start streaming to it because I think that just helps people on Rumble know you even exist.
Totally.
But we will start live streaming. Like if we live stream on YouTube with the Spiritual Gangsters, there's a good chance it's going to be going to Rumble as well. So there is another option. If you don't like YouTube or whatever reason, you can check in on the lives for the Spiritual Gangsters there as well. And for anything that, if you do follow us on YouTube and you didn't notice an episode, or if you notice an episode didn't drop, it's going to be on Rumble because it obviously was not good for YouTube.
Yeah. Just
So-
avoid the censorship.
Yeah,
there,
so
for
even
sure.
just for censorship reasons, if you want to catch stuff that might be censored, go smash that follow button on Rumble. So
Thanks.
You're welcome. No, because I think it is. I think it's actually. It seems to be a good place to do lives at, in my opinion.
And you know what? I do like Rumble as a user because I don't pay for YouTube Premium and I never will. But Rumble like does have the option, if you're watching on your phone, to have like the little picture-in-picture. Like it stays playing while you're doing other stuff on your phone,
Yes.
which is super handy. I appreciate that. I can have my screen locked and still be
Yes.
listening.
I noticed that
But-
today. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, it's great. Whereas like, you know, YouTube, you got to leave it untouched and open. And, you know, when you have little kids around, you don't want them hearing like conspiracy stuff going
Yeah.
on. I
Lizard
like to
people
lock
on
it.
Pizzagate. Yeah.
They're like, Mommy, what's the Illuminati? And they know way too much.
Mommy, can we go to Comet Ping Pong? I heard that place has good pizza.
Voodoo Donuts, please. No.
I'm probably going to get a strike now because I said that.
Yeah. Oops. Anyways. Yeah,
James
check out
Elephant is
the
going to be like, you
Rumble.
said Comet Ping Pong. I'm reporting them.
Yeah. Check out both our Rumbles. And yeah, that would be great.
Yes, for sure. And like I was saying, definitely check out Rumble if you do like lives. I'm doing it quite often on there. And like I was even saying before, I mean, I think since streaming on there, I've picked up like 100 more subs.
Nice.
So I think it also helps with the, you know, people seeing that the show exists. But like I was saying, if you don't like YouTube or whatever, Rumble, we will be streaming live to it. And you know what's funny? Like you said, I didn't realize how good, like this morning, I pulled up the player, played something. I think I was like checking maybe the live that I did to see what the quality looked like.
Mm-hmm.
And like I locked my phone. And I'm going to put it in my pocket and like I still hear myself talking.
You're like,
And I was like, what the fuck? And I was like,
Yeah.
yo, this shit will, I was like, wow, this still plays like even if you lock the phone. I was like, you know, not a lot of apps do that.
no.
And
no.
that is handy. Like if you just want to lock your phone, you put it in your pocket, put your headphones in,
Yeah,
you know.
exactly.
So definitely check that out. And I'm done rambling about that. Thank you very much, Teresa. I had this was a great episode to cover. It was really interesting to me. And you know, again, it really wasn't occultism. I just think it's very informed, you know, just information I like to put out there.
Totally.
You know, it's very interesting, and I think we all should all think about this stuff. And yeah, until the next one, everybody be well. Later.